Hey Rick, you know what's awesome?
What's that, Billy?
Pee Wee Herman.
I know you are, but what am I?
Okay, so Pee Wee Herman came out in Pee Wee's Big Adventure, the Tim Burton movie, came out in 1985. So I'd have been 9 years old.
Yeah.
And Pee Wee was very much a children's. He was kid friendly, to say the least. He was a grown up child, and completely subversive. But none of us knew that really at the time.
Right.
He just stormed onto the scene, and I think that most people. I think Pee Wee got really popular because most people were just thoroughly baffled by the concept. Like,
Sure.
who is this guy? And as a stage comic, Paul Rubens had the idea because Pee Wee is the perfect character in my opinion. He's innocent, and also he's grown up. He's an adult, so he's been places and he's seen things, but he still has this kind of childlike
Right.
view on things. But
The best way to say it is in the movie Step Brothers when the dad says, "Never lose your dinosaur." That's kind of what Pee Wee is, right? Never lose your kid. Even when you grow up, still be that kid that you were that was just fascinated by stuff. And that's really what made Pee Wee stand out. Plus, you put that 50s nostalgic thing behind it. Because obviously that's what he was aiming for, was that 50s, do-good kid, but in the 80s world. Because the 80s was totally infatuated with the 50s and the 60s, right?
mm-hmm.
So I go back a little further than Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Because the way that I discovered him was, I'd seen him in the Cheech and Chong movies, but I didn't know who he was. He was just a character in the background going, "No, I don't like it." He didn't really become Pee Wee yet. But him and Phil Hartman came up with the idea of Pee Wee Herman. And they created a stage show. And the way I discovered it, it used to come on HBO. And it's about 45 minutes long. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not.
I have absolutely seen it.
Oh, man. That's my favorite thing. And I had it on a videotape. I don't know who recorded it, but it was at my house. I watched this thing non-stop. And the thing about that, just like you were saying, he's a kid, and it's set up just like what we know later on as Pee Wee's Playhouse. It's the same kind of setup, but things are a bit more risque on here, right? Because he even gets... Dottie, who ends up being Dottie in the movie, come up on the stage and strip. Basically.
Yeah, they got the mirror shoes.
Yeah, and the mirror shoes.
They got the mirror
right.
shoes.
Yeah,
and that's what I was saying because I remember because HBO would play that stage show after Pee Wee's Big Adventure had come out because obviously you got to think in terms of stand up. They're stand up comics on the stage, doing their bit, and then they hit it big, they get famous, and you go back and you look at their old bits, and that's what HBO was doing. Was like, oh, well, here's his stage show, and it was like you say, it was very much, it was very Pee Wee's Playhouse, it was very Pee Wee's Big Adventure, but then they got in the mirror shoes.
Yep.
And
when Hammy's sister walks in and they put them on and they're trying to look up her dress, and she goes, "I'm not wearing any underpants." Then they're not interested, right?
Yeah.
That's that kid mentality.
They
Just wanted to see her underwear because that's what you're supposed to see. But when she's not wearing any,
yeah. And I remember that just being like I was old enough to be like, oh. It's like I got the joke. Like I was old enough to get the joke, and also kind of young enough still to be like, but that's what mirror shoes are for. So it hit me in that little that eclipse of age, like somewhere between the innocent and the grown up, which is exactly where Pee Wee landed. And
he's the kid that orders all the gimmicks off the back of the comic book. That's You did, I'm sure you just like me, you looked at those x-ray glasses and go, "I'd like to try those," right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So, he was the kid that did all that stuff, right? And that's what his show was kind of built off, was that mentality. And the fact that he shows old 50s school, footage and stuff in the middle of the show to show you, don't be a Mr. Bungle, the PSA stuff, right?
Of course.
And, it's just, I've always loved that stand-up show so much, and Phil Hartman's hilarious in it as Captain Carl. Folks, if you haven't watched the Pee Wee Herman show from back then, it came on HBO, that is what Pee Wee was meant to be. He was really not meant to be kid-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow, exactly what happened was the movie came out. So, that's all I knew of Pee Wee, was that show on HBO. This was Thanksgiving, 85. I go to a family reunion. They live in a little town called Trenton. And it's an every year thing. Well, we're all getting to the age now to where the oldest of the kids that hangs out has a car, right? So instead of hanging out in the bedrooms and listening to old cassettes like we've always done in the past, hey, let's jump in the car and go down to the movie and check out a movie. Well, we pull up and there's this movie called Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Everybody's looking around like, what is this? And I saw the guy's like, oh, I've seen this guy on TV before. Dude, we absolutely lost it watching this movie. It was the best. It's one of my favorite moments in life, was sitting there on Thanksgiving with all my relatives there, all of us teens, and we were just chuckling. It was so ridiculous. And come on, let's face it. Where else are you going to see Godzilla, Santa Claus, Twisted Sister, Morgan Fairchild? I mean,
dude, and a bunch of ninjas.
Ninjas. I mean, it was just perfect for me. I mean, I just absolutely fell in love with it. I can't tell you how many times I've watched Pee Wee's Big Adventure. I can't tell you how many times my daughter has watched Pee Wee's Big Adventure. She came and got it the other night because she wanted to watch it. She came over specifically to the house and wanted to borrow Pee Wee's Big Adventure. So it is a family staple here at my house.
It's absolutely, it is a masterpiece. And again, it's that masterpiece of weird, like.
Yep.
And when I say it's a masterpiece of weird, I don't mean it in any disrespect, because just like you, Pee Wee's Big Adventure has such a big place in my heart. Pee Wee's Big Adventure, again, like, it landed when I was about 9. I probably saw it when I was 10 because I didn't see it in the theater because I was not that fortunate.
Yeah.
Again, I was a very fortunate child. We lived just far away from theaters, so my parents wouldn't have driven me out there to see some weird movie that about some character they didn't know. But whenever it started hitting on cable and on rental, but I remember I saw it at a friend's house, spending the night. And at that age, 9, 10 years old, spending the night. The evening turns into shenanigans. We set it on episode 1 with Karate Kid. We'd watch Karate Kid and wake up the next day, or like not even wake up the next day, just go outside that same night and kick each other in the head just because. Spending the night at a friend's house, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, that's the movie, and that starts with the bike race.
Yeah.
And all those Tour de France racers are sitting there with their long pointed helmets and their short pants and their super like souped up hella bikes, and then Pee Wee just starts blasting out the front on his beach cruiser with all of the crap that weighs it down in his suit and bow tie,
saddlebags and the whole works, man.
And he's just like, and like. Again, it hits, as a kid, it just hits you where you live because that is you.
Yeah.
You're on your crappy BMX with the bent rim and probably a broken spoke from jumping too many 2x4 plywood ramps, right? But you just have this vision that you can just fly.
Yep.
It's like if given an open enough road and enough motivation, you can just speeder bike it right out of the universe, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's kicking ass on this Tour de France on his big ass bike and like his gray suit, and he's just and I remember seeing that and just being like, this is awesome. This is the most amazing thing. Just that opening scene at my friend's house of like, this is weird. I don't know what it is, but I like it. And then he then he wakes up and goes down the fire pole. He does his little calisthenics. Yeah. He does like half a sit up.
He's got those weights and he's like, I mean, it's playing on all those things, man. It just, he even rolls up the sheet, right?
Yeah.
It's such a kid's mentality of, if the world could be this way. I mean, I'd have sheets that you could just pull and they would just automatically roll up, and, he puts on his little bunny house shoes and,
It is very much the mentality of a lottery winner.
Yes.
It's like, dude, if I win the lottery, I'm going to build Castle Grayskull. It's going to be like Pee Wee Herman's house inside of it. Yep.
Yep.
And it's, but yeah, because his yard, it's full of all the statuary with the little sprinklers.
He's got the Mr. Wiggles or whatever that was called back in the day. I'm going to water my lawn now.
And he's got just like, he doesn't have a job. He's just got a lawn full of awesome stuff.
Yeah. And the whole, you can't leave out breakfast, man. The whole breakfast scene.
That's the whole Rube Goldberg. And the funny thing is, like, he has to go back every day and reset all of that.
You don't see that part.
But that's what's awesome about it, is because he doesn't care, because he just lives in this world where everything is awesome.
Yeah.
So he gets home at the end of the night and he's like, oh, let me go, like, put this back up here, click, 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 because it's not the breakfast. It's the making of the breakfast. Right. It's the process. Right. And it just makes him happy that it's all there. Like,
and what's amazing is none of this works without the Danny Elfman music too, man. That Danny Elfman soundtrack stays in your head.
I'm gonna say, because we mentioned in the Heartthrobs, the first Crushes episode, my first true crush in life was Lydia Dietz, right?
Yeah.
From Beetlejuice, Danny Elfman,
sure.
Tim Burton, right?
Yeah.
Danny Elfman was recognizable through all the movies. Anything that Danny Elfman did after Pee Wee Herman, I'm like, I like that guy.
Yeah.
I found out that he was just like Oingo Boingo.
Oingo Boingo, man.
Oingo Boingo's tough, man.
Yeah.
Oingo Boingo is weird.
We will.
The stuff we're talking about now, we're like, man, this is so weird, and this is weirder, and here's even weirder, and then like you go to Oingo Boingo, you're like, that's so weird, it's not even accessible.
It's music on cocaine.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we can do a whole episode on that sometime. We have to get Johnny Krug on. He's a big Boingo fan.
But anything that Elfman did, like his movie scores, and like if you ever want to have a fun evening of weird, go type Danny Elfman into YouTube and watch some of the people doing covers on keyboards, on some of the stuff like the Ice Dance or the Corpse Bride themes,
right?
And like, just look at how complex and difficult and multi-layered some of these things are. And Danny Elfman is an insane musician, and I've loved everything he's ever done, starting with Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Because
he's insane, but a genius all at the same time. I mean, to be able to put those things together, the odd time signatures, I would not want to play in a band with him, because there's no way I would not mess up.
Yeah, and I think he sets it up that way. He's like, here's the way your brain works, and here's the way a good brain works. And you're like, I gotta go.
Just give me 4/4 time.
But yeah, man.
I mean, it's such a big part of this movie. I mean, you take the music out, and it really would lose something. But another thing that's magical about this film is the fact of it's got scare factors as well. I mean, the nightmares with the clowns and all that stuff, man, that's frightening stuff. Large Marge?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could hear everybody yell in the theater when that happened, you know?
And that's again, because the best scares is not expected,
right?
And so it's so childlike and so dreamy and so weird and so fun, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, something's not right.
Yeah.
And so then it takes you out of that little innocent world into part of kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
And kind of an ongoing one at that.
The clown or the guy doing surgery on the bike, and he can't fix it, and he pulls down his mask, and he's got the big painted face, and he's laughing. It's like, holy crap, man! This is, it's scarier than Dr. Giggles.
There's a lot of stuff scary.
Most things are.
As I giggle. Well, no, but the like whenever he goes to the park to shop, he locks his bike up, and then he goes out and finds out it's stolen, and the clown's face is painted different. He's like, that was already kind of an uncomfortable universe he was living in. But
Pretty
then
crazy.
whenever it flips on you, and again, I think that's just that, because we had and I've mentioned the malls before. Like, we had a couple of different malls with, they had the big fountains, and they had the the McDonald Land characters and different stuff.
Sure.
Like, as a kid, there's a certain there was a place when I was a kid. I was like 4 or 5 years old, and it was in Northwest Mall, which I don't think is even there anymore. It was closer to our house, and it doesn't matter if you're not from Houston, but if you're my age and from Houston, maybe it would. There was this like ice cream shop, but it was in like an old 20s style, or they had like the flat top boat hats, and they'd sit there and they'd sing songs, and they'd have like a pipe organ, and it was all that, and it was scary as hell.
Sure.
And they'd get really, really loud. And they'd have clowns, and I remember it just scared the bejesus out of me. Just like, I don't want to go to Farrell's. Farrell's. Mom's like, your birthday party's at Farrell's. I'm like, no, no. And, of course, we went because that was the reservations, and we went. I'm sitting there like watching all these guys in little hats and clown masks, being like, or makeup, being like, enjoy your ice cream. I'm like, I'm scared, and I was probably.
Isn't
like
it
4.
weird? Yeah, because, I mean, it's weird how those things are associated. It's just like if you see the early pictures of, like, Ronald McDonald, and obviously they're aiming at the kids, but he was scary looking.
Yeah, he was.
The cheeseburger or the hamburger back in the day, the 70s version, was a scary looking dude. Of course, they changed him later on. But it's amazing they associate those things with what kids would like, because you had H.R. Puff and stuff and all these other shows that were using these kind of characters. But we had a thing in Tennessee called Opryland. I don't know if you ever heard of Opryland or not. It's a pretty big deal here. And when it first started up, they had H.R. Puff and stuff style characters that walked around. And there's a picture of me losing my crap, because this guitar come up to me with this scary face. And we're like, "Wah!" I mean, this thing, I'm still scared of that thing.
When I was a kid, like, I started preschool, and I went preschool, kindergarten, maybe first grade, at Long Point Baptist School. And from where I live, it's about 4 miles. From where my parents lived when I was a kid, it was about half a mile. So I'll see, like, even Houston is like we're known as the world's largest small town, because even though there's like 6 million people, everybody knows these landmarks, right?
Wow.
And Houston's a strange place. Like, I run into like that guy is now the singer of a new wave band. And then you see him like 5 years later, and you're like, and he's now an attorney. Like, this is. And I saw him in the same bar, like 5 years separated. Like, it's a weird world that I live in. But at Long Point Baptist, again, like, just to get back to it, for whatever reason, for our Halloween, like our fall festival, our little carnival, they brought in the McDonald Land characters, and I remember Hamburglar showed up, and I hit the ground running. Like, I made, like, my parents were there. They were ready to go buy some, like, candied apples. And, like, this was in the 70s. They're like, we're gonna have a grand old time. I'm like, get me the hell out of here. And my mom will bring it up from now. My mom will say it from time to time, like, you really didn't like that guy. I'm like, well...
I wonder how many people
hamburgers. What do you want me to say?
You always think, you always hear about people being terrified of clowns, and I wonder, people, if you're listening, if the reason you hate clowns, I wonder how many hate clowns because of Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Because these clowns were trying to be good at times, and then all of a sudden it just turned real dark real fast. And I could see where this would make people go, not for me, right? So if you're listening and you're terrified of clowns because of Pee Wee's Big Adventure, you got to let us know, because I'm curious about that.
This is not Pee Wee's Big Adventure. I'll tell you why I'm scared of clowns, and it's not because of it.
Poltergeist.
I told this. It's not even because of Poltergeist. I told this story on Scary Dad, and so my grandmother, when I was 4 or 5 years old, got into needlepoint, and she started doing needlepoint stuff, and at some point, this framed needlepoint of a hobo clown showed up on my wall. And I was 4 or 5 years old. I was a little kid, right? But the way that the moonlight would shine in through my window would land on this clown, and it scared the bejesus out of me.
And it's a hobo clown, too. Those things are just, they kind of had that sad kind of...
Yeah. And it was like shining like a spotlight on this clown. And so, like, I couldn't sleep because it's like The Simpsons. I'm like, right. I cannot sleep. The clown will eat me. Like, I got scared. And so, I perfected a layup shot because it was so high up and I was so short that I would have to run. And if I ran too fast, I'd hit the wall. I had to run and, like, turn to knock this thing up off the wall. And I'd run and knock this thing off the wall, and I'd, like, hide it under my bed or in a toy box or between some towels in a cabinet or something. Like, I would get this thing down. The next morning, or the next night, when it was bedtime, there was clowns on the wall, and got kind of creepy on me, because I'm like, well, I know that I defeated you last night, and yet here you are again.
It's the monkey's paw. Ah!
Right. And so, like I got really good at running and knocking this thing off the wall and finding different hiding places. Oh. And so finally, I don't know, I either just got too exhausted to fight anymore or whatever. But then, like, years later, it was like Christmas. I was, like, in my 20s, and I mentioned it to my mom. And she's like, I had no idea that... She's like, I just thought it just, like, fell off the wall. I was like... It fell off the wall and hit itself in a different room between towels. And you're like, oh, well, that just happened by accident.
Right.
She's like, I had no idea you were scared. I was like...
You couldn't hear me running and hitting the wall the first 4 times?
Like, dude... But yeah, like, that's why I'm scared of clowns. And so, of course, then Poltergeist. Yeah. Like, well, see, that's exactly why.
Right, yeah. My wife is terrified of clowns because of Poltergeist, so. Yeah, I'm not too scared of them. But anyways. But yeah, I mean.
Pee Wee, you're like, oh, see, they're not trustworthy.
They're creepy, man. They're creepy. So. But, again, the one-liners that are in Pee Wee's Big Adventure is that factor.
Before we get into the one-liners, let's take a break. I wanna make sure that all of our sponsors get paid.
So is my horn ready yet?
Yeah, it's ready. Should be loud enough for you now.
Well, where is it? Let's hear it.
Wait, I want to talk to you first.
You are talking to me.
No, I want your undivided attention. Look, Pee Wee, this is important. There's someone I want to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know if you'll do something.
What?
I want to know if you'll go someplace with me.
Like where?
the drive-in.
Look, Daddy, I like you.
I like you.
That's the thing, I like you too.
Daddy!
There's a lot of things about me you don't know anything about, Daddy. Things you wouldn't understand. Things you couldn't understand. Things you shouldn't understand.
I don't understand.
You don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me. I'm a loner, Daddy. A rebel. So long, Dad.
All right, let's come back.
So there's a ton of one-liners in this movie too that makes this thing a little bit more racy. It's almost like a Marx Brothers movie, right? How Groucho would just slide these one-liners in there, and you never saw it coming, and you would catch on to it way later on. Just
It
like
got past the censors.
Exactly.
It very much was like designed to get past the censors.
Yeah,
Like anybody who's a fuddy-duddy is just not gonna get it until it's way too late.
when he's sitting up there with Simone in the mouth of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and they're looking out, and he goes, "Everybody's got a big butt. Come on, Simone, let's talk about your big butt." It's all these things that are, it's still funny to a kid, but you can tell that was a little clever thing they did there.
And well, too, just him not getting it, where she's like, let's talk about our dreams. What's your dream? He's like, well, I'm.
There's a hot dog, I'm in a glazed donut. I mean, it's just like, what?
And that's a dream. Like that is like he's telling he's right in the middle of it. Like, man, like give me my chance.
And then when he comes downstairs and Andy is waiting for him. And so then from that point on, the movie does really become a road movie, right? So his bike is stolen. He's trying to find it. The whole thing with Francis. I mean, come on, man.
Dude,
the fake
stuff is so
putting
classic.
the automatic knocker on the door to trick the door guy and running in there and locking him in the bathtub. Scream all you want, you're not getting out. And he just that dive in the pool.
And the funny thing is, you mentioned like Pee Wee's, like and like we said at the beginning, like Pee Wee's like the lottery winner. He's just like an ever-present kid in a grown-up world. Yeah. Francis is the same thing.
Oh man, yeah.
Like Francis has parents, but Pee Wee obviously like is friends with Francis. But Francis is in there with an aircraft carrier as a boat and being Godzilla, like ripping stuff up in his bathtub, which is a full-size pool. And who didn't be like, this is the most amazing life ever? Oh, especially whether you're Francis or whether you're Pee Wee, like they're friends, like they're buddies. And who didn't ever get in a fight with your friend who like down the street and like, like you stole my G.I. Joe guys, man.
That's like, funny because I had a buddy that it was that kind of situation because every time he got mad, and this is the 70s, and of course the big catchphrase, the big commercial you saw on TV was Toyota, which is, you wanted it and you got it, Toyota. That was the logo, right? You want it, you got it. And every time he got mad, you wanted it and you got it. He would say that every time. I would hear that at least 2 or 3 times every time we played. He'd get mad and run off. You wanted it and you got it. But it reminds me of this situation that they have, because I love the fact that Francis dives under the water to hide, and he sees Pee Wee stepping down in the pool and those white shoes coming at him.
He's like, oh no, I'm in trouble now.
Man. It's just the best. If you don't find this stuff funny, there's just something wrong with you, man, because you're totally missing what this movie's about. And it's weird that you're taking this situation where even his friends are almost they're time travelers. It's like they're 50s kids, but then you got the BMX kids that are, it's the 80s. Mm-hmm. It's such a weird. All of Pee Wee's friends are all these weird, eclectic, 50s people. You got something you want to share with the rest of us, Amazing Larry?
Yeah, Amazing Larry. He doesn't even say anything. He whispers in the other guy's ear, and he's like, "Hey, don't you be saying stuff."
It was just brilliant, man. My wife's favorite part is when the hitchhiker picks him up, and it's the guy that's broken out of prison, and he's dressed up like the girl. When Pee Wee's dressed up like the woman and stops and, maybe take a picture, it'll last longer and all that stuff,
She cracks up. On boils.
She laughs every time. She thinks that's so funny. Oh. But, oh man, just the thrill of seeing this the first time in the theater and everybody being so caught off guard with everything. I mean, Pee Wee driving when it's late at night and you see all the weird road signs that are all crazy patterns and stuff, and then they fall off the cliff and he pulls the hatch for the convertible pop up to slow him down,
shoots him down.
And the whole being in the dark and it's being the animated eyes, then he puts those goggles on. I mean, it's just
he got those out of the back of the comic book, like you said before. Like it's
yeah. I mean, he's just got his arsenal full of that stuff, right? The trick gum and all that stuff. It's just great.
Well, that's like you said. It's like every kid, and again, even the speech with Dottie, where she's like, "Let me help you," and he's just like, the things you wouldn't and shouldn't and couldn't understand, like. And I put that in a poll, like, what's the most important? What are the most important things here? Because he's Pee Wee, man. Like, to be fair, he probably has some rooms in his house full of stuff you shouldn't understand, right?
Right.
But he's just nervous around girls. Like he's just like that's all of us. Like 10 years old,
right?
And that's what I said. Like at the beginning with the it's an adult theater, so you're supposed to be watching Pee Wee as an adult because that's what it was made for.
Yeah,
is watching adult comics make adult jokes and using that childhood whimsy as the
right.
But as a child watching those jokes and being like, I fully identify.
Yeah.
Girls make me nervous. I would much rather come off as a loner. I'm a loner, Dottie. I'm a rebel. And you're like, you look at Pee Wee because he's in a little suit and his little bow tie. You're like, you're not cool. You're not James Dean. Except for then later on, you're like, well, that's what's in every kid's mind because they're not James Dean. They are Pee Wee. And they just say things
look,
like
Dottie,
that.
you wouldn't understand. I've got a skeletal pterodactyl that squeezes a sponge and orange juice comes out of it. You don't want to hang with me, Dottie. I've got Abraham Lincoln flipping eggs and bacon on a griddle.
You don't want to come over to my house.
Oh man, just fantastic. So what do you think? What's your favorite scene that you think out of the movie? What's the one that just really stands out?
Oh man, that's a hard one. The opening scene with the bed and breakfast. And like the reveal on the bike. But then also being from Texas and the Alamo and the fortune teller scene, because as a kid we went on field trips to the Alamo, right? like I've been to the Alamo a lot, and that stuff is not there. Like the excuse me, if you've ever been to the Alamo, it's a building. It's a somber building. The Alamo that is known is a church, and the church is a very small building in what was a pretty large fort, which is all now city streets and buildings all around it. And there's like this kind of compound around it, which if you're walking around downtown San Antonio, they've got little areas that point out like, oh, here, this is the northwest corner, and here's the southwest corner of the Alamo. And the Alamo was a huge building, compound. And then you've got this little bitty church kind of in the middle of a park in the middle of the downtown. So when he goes to the Alamo, and they've got this huge, big touring thing, and it's all like kind of open. Like, no, I've been there. That's not how that is. And then you got Jan Hooks, and they've got we're in. Like,
we got thousands and thousands of uses of corn, which I'm going to tell you about each and every one of them right now.
Yeah, I remember being like, that's not. I've been there in the last I was there 2 weeks ago. That's not there.
It's movies, man. It's movies. It's like
it is movies. It's so great.
Buford Pusser looks nothing like Joe Don Baker. I can tell you that, or The Rock.
Right. But even whenever the fortune teller's telling him like it's in the basement at the Alamo.
At the Alamo.
Like, dude, there's no basement at the Alamo. it's not there. But so like being from Texas, and then of course he flips off, like he goes the 8 seconds on the rodeo. And like,
that's you, Slim.
He's like, what do you remember? What do you know?
What's your name? I don't remember. Where are you from? I don't remember. What do you remember? I remember the Alamo. You.
Everybody throws their hats and stuff.
That's just like, that's incredible, man.
That has to be my favorite scene because I'm from Texas, and it's because it was so ridiculous, and because again, like being so real quick. Let me
go ahead.
About 10 years ago, I was in bands, and I quit band, and then we started a new band, and then we got you know how players change out. Our drummer was a Scotsman. He was from Scotland. And we couldn't understand a word he said because he had that Scottish brogue, and he'd say words, and we'd be like, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. And then later on, after we got used to it, and he softened a bit, and we kind of got used to the way he talked, we were hanging around drinking beer and just chatting, like, so, you're from Scotland. Do you just, do you go to field trips to castles and stuff? He's like, oh, yeah, we go to castles, but, they're just there. Just drive by them and see them. Like, there's people over here like me. I'm like,
what?
If I had an opportunity to just go to a castle and just, go run around in there, I would. He's like, yeah, but y'all have the Alamo and, all these other things. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's
commercialized.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's funny. Duncan McLeish, from Podcast Under the Stairs, he's kind of one that got me started in podcasting. He would send me pictures. He's like, look, this is out my window at work. And on a hill, just right there where he's working, there's a castle on a hill that's an old relic. I'm like, holy crap. It's just, it's not like roped off and you can only park here. It's just, you walk up the hill and there it is,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you're talking about the Alamo scene kind of being your favorite. I like, one of my favorite scenes is when he gets to the Alamo. So when he's on the train with the homeless guy, the hobo, and they're singing, cherry crack corn, and I don't care. And he holds his ears and just goes, ah! And just jumps off the train.
Just jumps.
I just love the fact of that's the sign that you can't take anymore. You just jumped out. He's still got his ears covered up and just jumps off the train. Between that and when he goes to the bar and they give him the motorcycle and he cranks it first kick, he's got the jacket on and he takes off and he hits that sign. And you see that body flip head over end. It's the best.
Then of course, then he's in the ICU and he gets he gets surgery clowned. But dude, I was gonna say my second favorite has to be the Hell's Angels bar scene, Satan's Helpers, because
you're in the den of the Satan Helpers.
Because the thing is, and again, you mentioned at the beginning, I never really thought about it like that before, but the childlike, excuse me,
I'm trying to use the phone.
Excuse me, I'm trying to use the phone. And everybody in the bar is just kind of like they're too astounded to actually react. They're just quiet and look over at him like.
And I love the fact of his comeback. They're like, don't you know you're in the den of the Satan's helper? And he goes, nobody hipped me to that, dude.
No, I just was here.
I say we let him go.
He throws his voice to the back of the room.
And they'll go, no! And then you got Cassandra Peterson, right, coming up, Elvira. I say you let me have him first.
And that's the scariest part. That's the scariest
everybody
part
always talks about Oh yeah. Everybody always talks about him dancing to Tequila, which it's funny, but man, give me the motorcycle scene any day, man, any day. That's one of the funniest things ever put on film. When that bike hits, and you can tell somebody's just taking a mannequin body and just flipping it out there in open so you can see it, and then they all give him an escort to the hospital in the ambulance. It's great,
dude. The thing is, like, he won him over with, like,
yeah.
He won him over with the dance. He takes the bar backs of shoes. It's like, hey, all I need is a quarter and that guy's
no
shoes.
Yep. Kid mentality, man. It really is. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You know, how many times I think about my granddaughter, coming over and she hits the floor, man. She's a ballerina, right? Just like that, instantly.
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever she's into, that's what she is. It's not, I mean, it's, we can stand back and go, well, I'm pretty good at shooting pool. No, I'm the best pool player in the world. That's the mentality change. This guy truly believes that, like you said, with a quarter in this dude's shoes, I can win these guys over.
Dude, and then you get, like you said, Twisted Sister.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you start getting towards the end. The end starts getting weirder and weirder. but it never lets up. Like, it doesn't lose itself in like the third act. It doesn't start going down. And even at the end where he's just like that chase scene at the end, where he's like, oh, there's my bike. Okay, fine. Like I've traveled across the country. He never actually, like, he's been hurt because he crashed his bike, but nobody hurt him. He crashed himself.
Right.
And it's like he's got the support of all of his friends. He's never in any real danger, except for danger he puts himself in or danger he gets himself out of. But then he's like, I'm in Hollywood and there's the bike. And
I'm going to start a paper route right now.
yeah, dude, Hollywood's the weirdest of the weird, like, of all the scenes, like, of everything he does. Yeah. Like, whenever he's like, excuse me, and the dude's like he's like the guy, and he's like, I don't know. Like, he's just like effeminate and kind of high pitched, and it's like,
you stop the show girl, and she's like, yeah, I think he's over in that tent over there.
Yeah, it's completely unexpected.
5.
Everything's different. Yeah. And he's just like, oh, there's the bike. I'm gonna just take it home. And I'm like, I'll say. He's dressed as the nun. It's like, stop that nun. That's the best, he's man. Like, and then that chase scene. Yeah. He's just like, they're crashing. They're not crashing cars. They're crashing golf carts. Yeah. He's just like, this is awesome, epic golf cart chase scene where he's like driving through Hollywood lots and Godzilla. And of course, we already love Godzilla because of Godzilla, but then also because of Bobcat. You don't know if that's Bobcat with a cigar stuck in his. I
mean, just going through all the sets, and you got the boat that's pulling the skiers that ends up it's pulling Santa Claus and Godzilla. I mean, it's just, come on, man. It's a road movie at this point, and it's just hilarious. Man, and like I said, Twisted Sister, and of all songs, he's playing You're Gonna Burn in Hell. Yeah. Like, and it's like, I was really surprised with them picking that song being the one they're singing out in the street shooting a video for, because I guess they were kind of like the same thing as what Pee Wee was. People looked at them as a kind of a kid-friendly act because of the videos they had made, but they weren't, right? You go see them live, and, I mean, Dee Snider cusses like a sailor, man. Mm-hmm. And, so there was always, it's almost like that same thing with Pee Wee. It made you popular, but it can also be your demise as well, because it only gives you so much credibility. Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, the movie just keeps rolling, man. I mean, you're not even there yet. And the fact that Hollywood ends up buying his story and making a motion picture out of it with ninjas.
Well, dude, you gotta the pet store.
Yeah, that's the pet store
too. You gotta get to the pet store, because the pet store, I'm scared of snakes.
Sure.
I've got one true phobia, and it's snakes.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm not really scared of spiders. Well, like I've known a friend of ours had to had a big old chunk of her ass taken out because she got bit by a brown recluse.
Oof.
I'm not a friend of spiders, but they don't just like freak me out. When I see them, I'm kind of like, stay over there, and like what. I see a snake, I'm just like, I'm out the room. I'm gone. And so like, I'm no friend of snakes, but poor Pee Wee, man, he saved all the animals.
Yeah.
And then he finally just comes like he saves himself to save those freaking snakes. He's just like
coming out with 2 big handfuls of them.
He faints. He saved all the fish, man. And then he faints because he had to hold the snakes. And they're like, this boy, he doesn't say this man.
Right.
Like, this boy is a hero.
Right.
This boy is a felon. like, wakes up in the hospital like, we want to make a movie out of your story. It's like, yeah, that is the American dream right there.
The fact that he goes to Warner Brothers and has to sit there in a chair with the executives, and they're showing the footage of him doing all this stuff, and he's kind of like just shrinking in his chair, like, oh. It's the best, man. I love everything about it.
Oh man, like there was cameras everywhere. You saw all that,
right? And I love the fact that they gave him a cameo in his own movie. Of course, they showed it at the drive-in, and everybody that he's met on this road trip are all at the theater watching it with him or at the drive-in. Even the guy that was the criminal is on a.
It's Sandy, dude. He tries to sneak him a foot long. He tries to help him out because Sandy, like, his crime was taking the mattress tag off a mattress. Yeah. Like, he's a hardened criminal, but that's what got him there. Like there's. It's like I always thought that was such a stupid crime. Like, me and you both. Like, I got real mad one day, and I took a knife. And those tags? I cut one of them off.
It's
like now I'm
man.
In prison because that's a stupid crime.
Oh. And when he's got the cameo and it's not even his voice. Paging Mr. Herman, Mr. Pee Wee Herman.
And then you got Josh Brolin and Morgan Fairchild, who are the quintessential 80s icons of any kind. In 1985, those two were untouchable.
Yep.
They show up in this movie and have the bike stolen by ninjas. So it's not Frances who stole the bike.
Right.
It's like it's a team of ninjas.
Right.
That stole it, and Morgan Fairchild is in a silver bodysuit. Like, there's no better way for Hollywood to portray your story than that.
Right. Yep. Just everything about it. The movie just worked on so many levels. But what doesn't work was the follow-up.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about that. That's why this episode's been delayed so long, is because I haven't seen Big Top Pee Wee since the first time I saw it, and I didn't like it.
Yeah,
and I intentionally put it out of my head. But sometimes, as podcasters, you have to go back and watch stuff you don't necessarily want to see.
Yeah,
dude, Pee Wee's Playhouse was awesome.
Sure,
Pee Wee's Playhouse was good. I mean, it was a good long running show, and Pee Wee's Playhouse was exactly what the spirit and the letter and the spirit of the comedy, the movie, and the everything else was.
But then, it turned it into totally a kid's product at that time, though. So I mean, even my little brother had a Pee Wee, doll that you pulled the string and all that stuff. So it's like, I'm glad it happened. There you go. There he is.
I love you.
That's it. And so it's that same thing that ended up killing his career because of hey, I'm Pee Wee Herman and I'm not really a hit with the women. It's hard for me to go out and pick up ladies because I'm freaking Pee Wee Herman. It's kind of like being Captain Kangaroo, right? remember Sam Kinison used to talk about that. He used to talk about, can you imagine being married to Captain Kangaroo? When are you going to get a real job, you loser? Look, I can't help it. I didn't know I was going to be Captain Kangaroo for 40 years. So I mean, what do you do? I mean, So
you certainly what the answer is. You certainly don't go down to Central Park.
You don't take matters into your own hand in public.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I gotta say, because Pee Wee was such a hot property, he should have gone ahead and just had a VCR at home.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
Too bad.
I mean, it is, and I don't know if did you ever see the recent Pee Wee thing that they put out, the holiday?
I saw no Pee Wee's Big Holiday. No.
Yeah. I tell you what, check it out.
Okay.
It's pretty dang good, man. There's one scene in particular. I'm gonna wait till you see it if you can find it, and we'll talk about it, because I guarantee there's one scene that you're gonna want to talk about.
Okay. I'll have to get on that.
But my daughter actually had to convince me to watch it, and I'm glad I did, because it was actually really good.
I think it's still on Netflix, so I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I think we're at the end of this particular discussion. Let us know, man. What do you love about Pee Wee? What do you know? What do you love about the show, the TV show, the movies, the movies we didn't discuss, the comedy? Pee Wee's. We've been showing pictures, man. Pee Wee was everywhere.
Yep.
Pee Wee was all over the place. I mean, if you're going to be a stand-up comic, Pee Wee's about as successful as you're going to get.
Sure.
So, now, to be fair, he always had to be in character. He didn't get to be just Paul Rubens. He had to be Pee Wee to be where he was. But, I mean, man, the impact... Yeah, I think, seriously, too, the impact that Pee Wee had, again, on me...
Sure.
Was immeasurable. So, Pee Wee Herman is awesome. And
I wouldn't say he influenced me, but I will say this: when my dad remarried, I did the Pee Wee Herman dance at his wedding.
I wish there was video of that.
There is. There is.
Well, then let's post that up on YouTube. Well, awesome, man. Well, let's call that a show, and then we will reconvene next week.